Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talk 61 of Fearless Tips and Talks. In this episode, Christy Boulware and professional Christian counselor Dwain will touch on how to find peace through faith, therapy, and community, as well as how to find answers to your anxiety. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode.
So I think when we are honest with one another and when we just have real, honest conversations, that real transformation can happen. So I think I'm allowed to say this. Dwain's my counselor. So here's the thing. I believe in Christian therapy so much. And I have really flourished under his counsel. So I thought to myself, why would I be selfish and keep that? He needs to come and talk to you ladies and online. And so I just really believe that this is going to be a powerful, just kind of like we're together as ladies and a man talking through this. So yeah, that's my vision.
I do want to say before we get started, you're about to hear a lot of information.
Yes.
And a lot of it is going to be excellent, good stuff. I would highly encourage you to take some notes and pick what really is going to speak to you. What one or two things could you leave here tonight with that can help you personally?
It's good.
Dwain, you want to add anything about yourself to start before we jump into some questions?
Sure. I was a mama's boy. Does that matter? That I said that? I really was. And I love my mom dearly, and my grandmother, and a highly matriarchal family I grew up in. So I hope that makes...
Major bonus points.
Yeah,
good job.
Right. I can tell you some stories about growing up. So I'm just so privileged to be here, and this is a good place. And as we talked, as we were preparing this, I said, fear less. I said, yeah, that's what we all want to do. We want to learn to fear less in life and to fear the proper things rightly. And as we were talking about that, one of the things that came to mind is that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and that's where it all has to begin for every one of us. And once we get that fear in line, all other fears seem to minimize. Because let's face it, none of us really have control of the outcomes in life anyway. And we have to admit that to ourselves, that we are helpless. We're not an infinite being. We're finite. We have limits. But God invites us into relationship and tells us that he calls us by name. God doesn't have limits. We're limited by our own imagination, but I read where God is not. So I just want to add that as we sort of begin, as we start our conversation here tonight about how we can fear less and properly understand fear and anxiety in our life. And got a secret for you at the end. Sometimes it's not as bad as we think it is. It's just how we're thinking about it that makes it so bad.
It's good.
That's good. We did ask Dwain prior to tonight, what were the three top sources that he sees of anxiety in his clients? And he named these three: perfectionism, control, and approval. I hear a lot of, You struggle with that too, huh? All three were on my list. No. Okay, so I would love for both of you just to explain. Dwain, we can start with you. Why do you feel these three things contribute to anxiety?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, as we get into this, to think about it, I just want to throw a statistic out here. In a recent article in the Wall Street Journal, over 100 million people will experience some issue with anxiety in their life.
Jeez.
Isn't that amazing? 100 million. And that's just studies here. So I think if you look at this unholy trinity, right, that we mentioned here, perfectionism, I don't think any of us can really start to understand the impact of anxiety that it has on our life until we begin to step back and start asking the question, where did I first learn to think about myself in this way? Now, we all had parents who raised us. I have daughters that I've helped raise, and I know that I've not been a perfect parent. I think I've been a good enough parent, but I've not been a perfect parent. By the way, that's a good word, good enough. Not perfect, but good enough. I've been emotionally available the best I can. But somewhere along the line, we pick up on some messages. And we hear those messages from people that we respect. And we start encoding those messages, and we start picking up beliefs along the way. And if you sit with it long enough, and that's where we have to learn to be still, we begin to figure out that, in order to get approval, I have to be a certain way. Or in order to protect myself, I have to be a certain way. In order that I don't get in trouble, I have to be a certain way. And we begin to incorporate these into a schema and a belief system that we carry throughout our life. You think about perfectionism, it means to be without an error or a flaw. Ooh, that's a tall order. Now, in scriptural language, I would call that legalism.
Yeah. It's good.
That's good.
Christy,
Oh.
do you want to answer to that one, or the controller approval?
Yeah, I really struggle with control. When I don't know what's happening next, it gets me all up in a just an anxiety ball. And I think if we're honest, isn't it the same way for all of us? I mean, if we don't know what the next step is, or how that person is going to respond to you, or just what are your children going to end up like? I can't control the fact that sickness and disease is, I mean, I can do the best I can, but sometimes things happen, right? And those things really, they freak me out. So I've had to learn that I'm not in control. God is. And when I can remember that and trust that, sometimes, y'all, I'll just have to say, in my real panic moments, I'll just have to say, I trust you, God. I trust you, God. I trust you, God. And even sometimes before I'm going to bed, I trust you, God. I trust you, God. Do you believe it? Do you really trust him? I mean, these years from 2011 till now, since I had my nervous breakdown, I've had to learn how to trust God. And maybe some of you here today just need to learn how to trust him. That he is good. He is faithful. He will be there for you. He will never leave you or forsake you. Do you trust God? So the control goes away when I learned that he's in control.
That's great, very good. Yeah. Dwayne, anything to add to that, or you want to move on to?
Yeah, I think with control, I mean, how many of us really want to control? You meet anyone who's ever been serious about recovery and getting their life back together, one of the things they have to give up is control. They submit themselves to a higher authority because it's really an illusion that we have control. The only thing we really have control of is our attitude. Mm-hmm. And at the end of the day, that's the one thing we have to keep in mind. I can influence events, but I really can't control events. And so when we're faced with that, our fear mechanisms begin to kick into overdrive. How many of you have ever been emotionally flooded with such sensation because you felt that you were out of control? Well, of course we are, because we're trying to make sense out of something that doesn't make sense for us. One thing I would encourage you to do when you experience that in your life, I want you to get a piece of paper and draw a line right down the middle. What's in my control, what's not in my control. Because what that does is it shifts us more to a problem-solving mode, and we start getting into our front brain. Because that's what we humans have been doing for a long time. We've been solving problems. And here's another clue. If it's not your problem, you really can't solve it. We can really only start solving our problems and no one else's. And that's where we have to give up control. Approval, how many of us like to be approved? And you know what? I hear people say sometimes in therapy, I don't care what people think about me. I'm like, really? I care. Actually, I care if you kind of like me, because I'd like to work with you, or I kind of care if my neighbors like me. I kind of care if my wife likes me. Even my dog. I mean, I care about these things. I care if you like me. The only difference is I don't let it define me. And that seems to be the difference. I do care, don't you? But my worth isn't dependent on your opinion of me, because that's your expectation, and you've got your own demons you're fighting with, so I've got to kind of keep that in mind. That many times with approval, perfectionism, and control, and this is something we could probably go on and talk about a long time, usually underneath where the symptoms begin to rise is some trauma that we are trying to work out, and these are the symptoms that manifest themselves. So as I work with people, I'm always listening to a trauma narrative somewhere emerging in the story, and I hope that makes sense.
Yes. So good. Thank you, Dwayne.
Yeah.
Anything to add to approval, or are you okay with us moving on?
No, he's so good, right?
know,
It all
just
just makes sense. It's like,
Guess
yeah.
what? We're recording this so we can
Yeah.
listen again.
Yeah, I'm gonna play it back.
Yes. Okay. I had mentioned a little bit earlier just about having unhealthy versus healthy fear. I think we should elaborate a little more on that. Just what's the difference between that? How do we know when we're unhealthy in our fear?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you mentioned the fear of snakes.
Yeah.
I have that
I hate
fear. I have that fear. And, you know, we all have kid fears, I call them, things that we grew up with that were reinforced. A lot of times what we fear can be based on maybe what our parents feared, the way they reacted to things. Because the way we react seems to be how our kids react sometimes. If we can keep our head together, they seem to keep their head together. There's something called mirroring neurons that we have that creates empathy and space with people. So when we're working with people, you pay attention to nonverbals. We clue in on them. If I cross my legs, you tend to cross your legs. It's funny how that works. We sort of clue into each other, and those are big deals. But when you think about a fear versus anxiety, I want to give you two distinctions because it's kind of good to keep this in mind. A fear has a protective mechanism to it. There are certain things that we probably ought to fear, like not doing your taxes could get an audit from the IRS. I don't know about you, but my stomach might drop. I got one of those letters the other day, actually. It was nothing important, but it came from the IRS. I was like, what did I do wrong, right? Mr. Perfectionist here can't do anything wrong, so what did I do wrong? But a fear is usually something external and concrete. In other words, fear has an object. When I meet something like that, my brain is already summarizing whether or not this is a friend or a foe. Okay, so that can be a healthy sense of fear. But the other sense of fear that can sometimes be unhealthy is what we call phobias. You ever heard the word phobia? Like we have a fear of something, and it's kind of irrational, and we don't know where it really came from. Like a fear of snakes, or a fear of heights, a fear of falling, which, by the way, a fear of falling is an inborn fear. That's why infants cling to us. They know. Or fear of loud noises. That's something too. They just know. You know, if you've raised a child, they know this stuff. So certain inborn fears are kind of healthy. Why? Because they protect us. But when it crosses over to a phobia and it begins to stifle my life, stops my creativity, and immobilizes me, then you know it's crossed over to an irrational fear. There is really no reason to fear this.
Stops your creativity. That just hit me. I was like, oh, man, that happens a lot. I want to touch on this because I don't know if there's any other people thinking what I'm thinking right now, but, you know, when you have a panic attack, it is generally you're afraid and you have like this feeling that this impending doom, something bad is going to happen to you. That is a fear that takes place that's unhealthy. But, you know, Dwain, why does that happen out of nowhere? Can you explain the kind of the chemical side of that? Because I'll be just going along my business doing just fine, and then bam, I've got a panic attack happen. Can you explain to us why that happens?
Yeah, very good. It's so uncomfortable, isn't it?
It's awful.
It's just awful. Well, I just want to say first off that you won't die from a panic attack.
That's right.
You think you will, but you will not die from a panic attack, okay? Usually there's usually two types of panic attacks. There's cued and uncued. Like, for example, I run into somebody that I don't like, and we've had words in the past, and we just don't get along. And I'm like, whew, that was sort of panicky. That's cued, right? Uncued are the ones you're kind of talking about, where they just show up out of nowhere. And what we know about them is it's really an anxiety attack. There is something that I am repressing in my body, perhaps, that is manifesting itself at this moment. And this is how it's showing up. And I think as you look at the difference in that, your body is expressing this in a way that it needs to be relieved. So, for example, when we experience any sort of anxiety or panic, one of the things we have to do when we work with this is to get people to learn to put on the brakes and slow down and get to know yourself. Because if not, anxiety just likes to show up. Have you all experienced that? It just shows up. It's my uninvited friend, and it just begins to show up. But the more that we get to know ourselves, and I'm so glad you read your journal at the beginning. I brought mine up here. This is like my friend. Now, sometimes we have a wonky relationship, but for the most part, there's a lot of thoughts and ideas. Why? Because I want to get to know myself. And the more I get to know myself, the less I'm sort of caught off guard by these things. Something is happening in the environment that possibly I'm repressing or not talking about that I need to confront somewhere.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that. So I read that journal entry to you this morning, or this evening, but what I want you to hear is I felt better after I wrote that out. Like, because I was in those moments. God, why do I feel this way? Why does it feel like a constant poker? Why does it feel like I have a short fuse in my brain? Like, please, God, what is going on? And I heard him whisper to me. I heard him calm my fears. I heard him tell me that he was with me and that he loves me and that it's going to be okay and that my hair falling out was okay and that, I could hear him speaking to me. But if we don't get to it, if we don't get down to the bottom, if we don't write in our journals, if we don't get real with ourselves, then we're never going to be able to overcome this stuff. So please, even if it's just a notebook, go to Walmart and get a notebook. Start writing this stuff down. What are you thinking? What are you feeling? I call it a thought dump. And when I am having kind of a rough week, I'll just everything. It all goes down there. All the bad, all the ugly, all the things that I wish I didn't think, but I do think. I put it all down. It's so important to get it out.
That's awesome. Thank you all for sharing that.
Yeah.
Dwain made me think of something that Christy calls smoke alarms. And this is just when you are having those warning signs going on in your body. You want to speak to that a little bit about smoke alarms and practical ways you handle that?
I think one of the best gifts that God can give us is when we're feeling anxiety. Like, maybe let's shift our focus. Let's say, okay, I am feeling anxious right now. And instead of being afraid of it, it's like, wait a minute. Okay, there's something suppressed inside of me right now that's trying to come out. Let's not be afraid of it. Let's hit it head on and go, okay, what exactly is happening here? So for me, my smoke alarms, okay, first of all, if a smoke alarm's going off, right, are you going to ignore it?
No,
right?
It hurts your ears and it makes
annoying.
you shrill and you have to stop it.
Exactly.
Yes.
So let's not ignore these ladies. So I get like a tight band goes across my chest. It just feels really tight right here. Sometimes I'll get my heart will race really, really fast and it'll kind of feel like it'll skip a beat. Now, if that's never happened to you before, please get that checked out by a doctor first, right? But it's happened to me enough now that I know it's a smoke alarm. I will get, the saying, butterflies in your belly, you'll get butterflies, I'll get really, my stomach will get queasy and stuff like that. I get really bad tension headaches in the back of my neck. And then, or my shoulder blades will do that. Another thing, tonight, when you go to bed, when you're laying in bed, just pay attention to your body. Are you is your shoulders up like this? Is your jaw clenched while you're laying in bed trying to rest? I see people looking at each other laughing because it's true. It's true. Pay attention. Just be like, Christy asked me to pay attention to my body tonight while I'm sleeping. So if you're sitting like that, that's a smoke alarm. Your body is tense. You need to relax. So it's so important that we pay attention to these triggers and these things, because if we will, then a lot of times we can circumvent an actual anxiety attack. You can stop it before it actually starts.
Yeah, very good. I love the smoke alarm analogy because sometimes you just need to replace the battery or sometimes there's a fire. And you really have to know the difference. So you got to check it out, don't you?
Yeah,
you really have to keep a check on this.
I need to add that to my book.
Yeah,
can I add that to my book? Do I have
sure
permission
can.
to add that too? Okay,
yeah,
that's good.
Just royalties, please. So, and so, you can just sort of think about how I slipped that in. Just subliminal, But, so, one of the things that I want to also talk about with that is paying attention to your body, is doing some really good body scans. How many of you have intentional time where you stay still? Psalm 46:10, be still and know that I am God.
How long are you talking? Like a minute, 30 seconds?
I'm talking
5
15
minutes?
or 20 minutes.
Right. Let's just take a poll.
Yeah,
Anybody
but
stay
you know
still
what?
for 15 minutes?
If you have to start out with a minute, that's better than no minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, 60 seconds is better than no seconds.
Yeah.
And learn to breathe. Because, you know, if you think about when we were created, the first thing God did was breathed into us, right? Breath, life. Learn to breathe and connect with yourself and find out what's going on in your body. And that's really an important thing. I mean, for example, if I'm getting a little anxious, my throat gets dry. I can kind of tell, or the tension in my jaws. I do that. I'll lie there sometimes up in bed at night and I'm saying, why am I so tense? And it's amazing. How many of you do yoga? Great stuff. Body movement, Tai Chi, exercise. I'm a cyclist. I love to get out and ride my bike. Anything like that connects us to ourselves. And when our body begins to speak, whether it's a headache or a backache, I say, okay, what's going on with you right now? Well, I don't always run and get an ibuprofen to numb it. Sometimes I say, what's going on with you right now? What are you not confronting? What aren't you dealing with? I want to give you a quick exercise. Can I do that real quick?
Yeah.
Okay. It's called Sift B. Okay, so write down the word sift, S-I-F-T, and then B, all right? And this is just a mindful exercise you can do to sort of help you through this. The letter S for sift means sense. What am I sensing right now with myself? What am I sensing? Just write whatever it is when you do the exercise. The I means what do I imagine is happening to me right now?
Ooh, that could be a dangerous one, Dwayne.
Yeah, I can, right?
Yeah.
The F is what do I feel right now?
Okay.
Learn to develop a feeling vocabulary. Some folks come in therapy and they say, how do you feel? Well, they're just always angry. And I say, you're just always angry? There's more words we can use. Maybe you're just really sad, okay? And the T is think. How are you thinking right now? And the B is behave. How do I want to behave right now? It's a quick exercise. You can practice and get really good at it. You can get good at this standing in the grocery store line. All it takes is a few breaths of awareness, and we can get grounded, and that can really help us with these smoke alarms.
That's good. It's really good.
Why don't we move into some practical things we can do when we are facing that anxiety? I heard you say you like to go ride a bicycle. That's awesome. My favorite is to go for a walk and pray and just soak in creation and notice what's around me and sense what my body is doing. Christy, what are some of the things you do to help just practically with your anxiety?
I walk. I try to get in my steps for the day, and then I plug in some worship music as I'm going. That seems to really help as well. But I wanted to share this because this is a new part of my journey that God is just kind of starting to show me. But I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease, I guess, and that's a thyroid issue. And come to find out, I actually had it back in 2011 when I had my nervous breakdown, but we didn't get diagnosed until about 2 years ago. So I've really been on this journey of understanding how food impacts my body and my mind. And no like shame or condemnation here because I like a Twinkie like everybody else, you know, so, and I love sweets and chocolate and all that stuff. But what I am realizing is that I can see a direct correlation in my body and how I'm feeling mentally when I don't eat right, when I'm not getting enough liquid. And it seems like, well, duh, but no, seriously, like it is so true. So I'm on what's called a paleo diet, basically. No gluten, no soy, no milk, no fun, no, like just like, no, just
That's a lie.
I've learned how to eat some really good stuff
You
now.
found some good chocolate.
I have, yeah. But anyway, I just want you to know that my journey with learning how to eat better has drastically helped anxiety. So don't think for a second that your carbohydrates and your sugars aren't like flaring up the inflammation in your body, which directly deals with the anxiety that you might be feeling. So I just want to, maybe this is the one thing that you're going to take home today. Hey, I need to change my diet. Maybe I need to work on that. Also, really like check out with your primary care physician. Has your thyroid been checked out? Are those things that could be creating extra anxiety, are those regulated? Have you had a clinician look at them? Because that absolutely matters when we're dealing with anxiety.
That's good.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Food and mood. They rhyme, kind of goes together. Now, I've got the antidote. If you go on a long cycle ride, celebrate with a bag of Skittles. You will not feel guilty at all, right? It just totally absorbs it and sort of moves on. We all have our moments, don't we?
Skittles are yours?
I'm a Skittle guy. I love those things. So,
taste the rainbow.
Rainbow flavor, right? So, yeah, I couldn't agree more when it comes to food and eating a nice plant-based whole food diet. That's my prerogative of the way I like to eat and the way I like to treat my body, because in the end, all food is chemical information. That's all it is. So what chemistry do I want to feed my body? That's really my question. What chemistry am I going to give my body? That's all it is, and your body knows how to do the rest. But it is interesting, if we've been eating well for a long time and we sort of slip a little bit, you ever noticed how you feel? If you're tuned into your body, you'll figure it out pretty quickly. I feel sluggish. I feel a little angry. I'm upset. Isn't that interesting how that just begins to impact us and take us over? So food and mood is a really important thing. Some practical things that I want to throw out here. I mentioned breathing and relaxing. How many of you take time just to breathe and learn to pay attention to your breath? It is so important, because the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system is like the gas and the brake, and we got to learn how to work those. A low-stress diet, regular exercise. How many of you take a Sabbath and literally just attune to yourself and take care of yourself? How many of you take mini breaks during the day? How many of you are good at setting boundaries? Boundaries equal health. All right. How many of you get good sleep at night? Yeah, I track mine every night. It's like an OCD thing I have, and it's really amazing, especially your HRV, if you're into that, how your nervous system is interacting during your sleep. How many of you avoid non-toxic environments? Yeah, a lot of hands went up on that. That's good to hear, because that's important. And so those are some things that I would really sort of stress that you work on as well. So we'll talk about a few more things. But how many of you have a good sense of humor? How many of you know how to play and have fun? You remember when you was a kid, you just went and had fun? For some reason we think as adults we can't do that anymore. I don't know where that came from, but I still kind of like being a child sometimes and going and have fun. So go play sometimes.
Yeah.
That's good. I need to have more fun.
You need some Skittles.
You need some
I'm
Skittles.
going to go water skiing soon.
Yay!
Just stand on the bridge at Lake St. Louis and I'll wave at you. Okay, so Christy, why don't you share with us just about the importance of a community and how that can help us as we walk through anxiety?
I'm so passionate about this. So I'm having a nervous breakdown. I'm 3 weeks into this hell, literal hell, and I'm not sure I'm going to make it out. And I felt so alone. I felt so alone. I didn't know anybody at the time who had been through what I was going through. And I remember getting down on my knees, and at that time I wasn't really walking the walk with God. I believed in him, but I didn't have a relationship with him, but I was desperate. I was desperate. And I got down on my knees and I looked up at this little cross on the wall, and I was just like, God, if you're real and you want to help me out of this, like, I'll do whatever you ask me to do. I'll do whatever you ask me to do. and please send help. And it was this most amazing thing happened. I felt this like prompting to call a friend that I had not seen in over 7 years, a college friend. And I remember, you ever have those ideas that come into your head and you're like, that is so random. That if I do this, it's going to be so weird. But anyway, I wound up reaching out to this friend, and you are not going to believe this. She said, Christy, I'm 1 year ahead of you. I just got diagnosed a year ago with severe panic and anxiety disorder. And she poured so much wisdom and love into me at that moment. And I made a promise to myself. I was like, I want to be that community for someone else. I want to be that help for someone else that is dealing with this. So being able to tell someone what you're feeling. So this is like, okay, if you don't have a good friend that you can trust, or a husband, or a sister, or a mom, or somebody that can help you through some of the dark stuff that you're going through, then you need to get in counseling. At least let the counselor be that person for you. But here's the thing. We've got to get friends. We've got to have friends. We have to have community.
Hey, wait. Look at this friend group. They have on shirts that match. Isn't that so fun?
Stand up and show your shirts off.
It's
That's
so
so cool. It
fun.
says Sisters in Christ. Shut the front door. That's amazing. I love that.
So fun.
I love that. So yes, get yourself some friends. But here's the thing. Why did you get those? Praise
Awesome.
Jesus. That is, congratulations.
That is so cool.
That is so awesome. But you all have been through the thick, the darkness, the crud, the junk, the hard stuff, right? You guys keep it real with one another, don't you? That's the friends we need, girls. Those are the friends we need. It does. You have to be in community with one another. Community matters.
It does matter. It does. And we have some community groups through Fearless that we're going to talk about. Hang on, just a little bit. We call them impact groups, and we're going to go deeper in that in our announcement section a little bit. Dwain, what do you think prevents people from being involved in communities, or why do we choose to isolate when we know it's healthy for us to be in community?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is shame and vulnerability, and we don't like to avail ourselves to other people to be fully known. We all have secrets, and we like to keep our secrets, and we nurse our secrets, and sometimes they come out in nasty things like anxiety and panic and depression. They can show up. I would think that would be one of the things I would talk about. We will find an excuse to do everything except probably the things we need to do. I don't have time. No one will understand me. I can't find a place where I'll be loved and accepted. Well, that's distorted thinking. You know, as people say sometimes in therapy, I've tried everything. I'm like, wow, then why are you here? But see, I think that's the key. You tried everything. You didn't stick to one thing and learn how to do it well. Because that's just anxiety. It tells me I have to try everything. So anxiety is going to keep me from that because of fear and shame. It doesn't want me to be fully known. You know, Paul, when he was writing to the Corinthian Christians, reminded them that we see through a glass darkly. But one day we shall know as we are fully known. In other words, the great reversal is going to happen. But then he begins to talk the one thing that will remain throughout all time and eternity is love. That was the one thing that can change us is love. So I have to ask, what prevents me from wanting to be loved by other people? And usually it's shame or fear or rejection, that schema that goes in my head, I think, that keeps people from investing in community.
Very good, Dwain. That's good, just to evaluate yourself and see, is there something holding you back from being involved in a community? Before we end our time together, I would love just anything else that we haven't gone over, Dwain, from your notes you want to share, or Christy, that you think would be beneficial just in our anxiety answers time to share with our audience today.
I just want to make sure there isn't anything in that wisdom notes right there that
would
you're
you like to
supposed
read your
be
notes,
sharing.
Dwain?
Yeah.
Well, no. No.
Right? Couldn't you just sit and listen all day?
You know, I just want to mention a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. How many of you ever read Emerson? Great. Saw one hand, saw two, I think. That's saw three. It's okay. We're here together. We're here to support each other. But, you know, Emerson talked about the quality of life and what it means to live a successful life. He was a transcendentalist back in the day and, you know, looked at life a little bit differently. And I think this sort of pours into our anxiety sometimes is because we get into the comparison trap. We think we have to be a certain way. That's where perfectionism likes to creep in, or approval or control. But Emerson said this at the end of one of his wonderful writings. To know that you have helped another person breathe easier is to have succeeded.
Read it again.
To know that you have helped another person breathe easier is to have succeeded. Now that's powerful, isn't it? To know that you are put here on this earth to not only experience the love of God, but also to love others. Is your role in life is to help people breathe easier. And I think of anxiety as a way of just constricting us.
Yeah.
And we need to be around people who care for us enough to pour into our life to help bear the burden and help us breathe easier. And imagine if we could all do that here tonight, that my job every day is to make sure that I want to help someone breathe easier. How much of the world do you think you could change just by thinking that way? Am I being a burden to you or a blessing to you? Am I helping you breathe easier? I think those are powerful words, because at the end of the day, anxiety can be your best ally. I told you I was going to save that to the end. Because sometimes what anxiety is trying to teach us, if we learn to be still with it, what is it that you need in your life to prepare for a better future? And if we sit and listen, anxiety sometimes will teach us what we need to do. Maybe we need to connect with someone. Maybe we need to learn a new skill. Maybe we need to go see a therapist, join a group, become part of Fearless. Maybe we need something in my life, because anxiety is always good at showing us what's missing. And it's our way of thinking about it that distorts it. Maybe it's our chance to understand what could be fulfilling if we just take time to slow down and breathe.
So good. Thank you so much.
You're
Dwain.
welcome.